I'd like to introduce myself. My mates call me Herbie, you're more than welcome to as well. I come from a family history of violence, anger, hatred, mental illness. And I've learned to calm down, and I've actually broken my family's cycle, and I'm hoping that maybe, possibly, you could do it as well. Now, I'm third generation on my father's side, fifth generation on my mother's side. Turns out he came out a free man. Unfortunately, I wanted him to be a convict. Hey, Aussie, Australia was formed on the scum of the earth. We were the crap John West rejected. We were the convicts that were sent away from England. A little while ago, spoke to a Pommy, and he said, you call us Poms, yet you Aussies, are the Pom. And I said, why is that? And he said, Pom means prisoner of Mother England. Fair enough. They're the Poms though, they're still the prisoners. We were released years ago. Now I'm proud to be an Aussie, very proud. And I don't claim to be anything more than a kid in a sandpit that hates bullies. I've got a Year 10 education, yet I can sit here and explain to you, or stand here and explain to you, that they messed up theories of mathematics, messed up theories of science, and I can actually explain away scientific and mathematical equations and formulas. After what I've been through in my life, I was told that my father was diagnosed with the most debilitating disease of the brain called schizophrenia. Everyone told me that my mother was bipolar. My entire family is completely and utterly dysfunctional. It makes the Simpsons look functional. And I've learned to calm down. And I can, after what I've been through, for example, very early age, I almost died on the table. They found out the hard way I'm allergic to penicillin. I've been told that my blood type is O negative, which means I can give anyone my blood type, but I can only accept O negative blood type. But the chances are, if I gave you my blood type, you probably wouldn't be able to handle the lack of blood in my alcohol system. And the fact that I've been to a special motel, had a deep and meaningful financial transaction, I can't donate blood anyway. So, I lived in a relationship with a woman for 8.5 years. She was a nurse. She drew blood from a patient and pricked herself. We went through that whole scare of AIDS. I can actually give you the registered patent and cure for AIDS. Patent number 5676977. And at herbie.com.au, I'll give you not just the patent number, but the actual link to the actual patent and how it works. They somehow inject tetrasilver hydroxide into your system, and the silver inside it overheats your body system and boils the AIDS virus. Now, the reason you don't know about this is simple. If they admit that there's a registered patent cure, patent 5676977, they have to admit they created it. If they admit they created it, they have to admit liability. If they admit liability, they have to compensate the world. And the people who created it are pretty much broke anyway. They're almost bankrupt. Well, they pretty much are, they just don't tell you about it. Now, when I was driving tow trucks, I had my boss on, I was holding a guy up with my right arm, my boss was holding it up with his left arm, and I'm standing there, this guy in between the two of us, and he was so drunk he couldn't see the car in front of him. At one point, my boss slammed me in my chest and hit me, knocked me flying, as the guy I'm holding up vomited all over where I was standing. He was then taken down to the station, charged, and literally pushed out the front door. He was so blind, rotten drunk, but the fact is he also had hepatitis alphabet, hepatitis A to Z, the whole lot. So I've had a few scares with health. I was once told that I was diabetic. I'm not anymore. Well, I never was in the first place, but I was told for 18 months. Prick my finger 3 times a day, morning, noon and night. There's nothing wrong with me. I took a simple cure for type 1 diabetes. It's called the Lucozade test. Simple bottle of Lucozade. So, been through a few bits, because they told me that I was going to catch the same disease as my father, the most debilitating disease of the brain, and I'll give you a really good example of why. Many, many years ago, I spoke to my grandfather and I said, Pop, I've worked out the cure for schizophrenia. He said, oh, all the doctors in the world haven't worked it out, but I've seen it. I said, oh yeah? Well, you tell me then. And he says, oh, all the doctors in the world can't explain it. How could I explain it? But I've seen it. And I said, Pop, you're a stupid old fool. And he turned around and said, see, you've got the same disease as your father. I disagree with my grandfather, point out that he's an idiot, and I have the most debilitating disease of the brain. A few years ago, I went into one of the leading institutes in Sydney on schizophrenia research. Said to the guy, look, I'd like to explain the cure for schizophrenia. He says, oh, okay, how are you going to do that? I said, give me 10 minutes. He said, you got 5. After about 4 or 5 minutes, he says, okay, let's go outside. Walked outside into a park, and he told me that his son was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I said, why is it that you diagnose your son? Because he's got a totally different opinion than you. We all have our own beliefs, we have our own perception. And he said, well, that's the way it is. I said, I could walk up to anyone in this park, pointed out about 50 odd people. I said I could walk up to anyone and ask them a question if they had thoughts running through their head, all sorts of weird stuff running through their emotions. And he says, oh, don't approach anyone. Don't approach anyone. At one point, someone walked over and said, excuse me, mate, you got a lighter? I said, look, I don't actually smoke, but can I ask you a question? And she said, yeah, sure. I said, do you ever have lots of thoughts running around inside your head, conflicting information? She goes, all the time, sends me nuts. He got up and walked away. He's walked away, and I've caught up with him, and I said, why is it that you tell people that they have a disease and a disorder when they have a different opinion to you? And he said, that's the way it is, and walked off. Mind you, that was the Garvin Institute, and that was almost 5 years ago. Now, at one point, one of the biggest organisations in Australia, research institutes, they were searching for the cure for AIDS. I walked in there, and I said, mate, I'd like to give you the cure for AIDS. He said, whatever. I said, here it is, patent number 5676977. And he said, what? I said, mate, it was registered in 1997. And every time he went to open his mouth about science, mathematics, theory of evolution, all sorts of things, I just put him down and said, mate, this is the fact, this is the fact, this is the fact, this is the fact. And he didn't like that. He actually seemed like someone that was actually genuinely trying to find the cure for AIDS. Now, this was 3.5 years ago. Now, he would have walked out the back, said to his boss, hey boss, there's a cure for AIDS. And his boss would have looked at him and said, shh, don't tell anyone, we'll both be out of the job. Remember, it always comes down to money. It always comes down to how people want to try to get ahead in life or hold you back. The dollar is how you look at it. Some people like to make it, some people like to take it. When it comes to bullies, you've got the tax man, okay? Chances are, little kid grew up stealing little kids' lunch money every morning, got away with it, got away with it, got away with it, went on to primary school, went on to high school, kept getting away with it, went on to become a tax man. Stands there and tells you that you must pay tax. Just a bully that's trying to get something off you. Now, read the Australian Constitution. Bet you didn't even know we had one. Yeah, you probably didn't know that. But basically, Australia has a constitution, and I've gone through it because I watched a movie called Zeitgeist, and according to the American Constitution, they don't need to pay income tax. I went through the Australian Constitution. Apparently, according to that, there is no information in there that states that we have to pay income tax. Yeah, I'd like a few QCs to have a look at that one. But then again, if there was no taxes, how do they make money? Again, it comes down to the dollar. Now, I'm going to show you how to make a lot of money to fund what I'm about to show you. Now, what I'm about to show you is some equipment that will reduce deaths, will reduce a lot of anguish and anger in the world, and will reduce hunger, famine, and poverty. So I'm going to show you how we can do it. But again, you've got to learn how to think outside the square in which you live. And I'll show you this equipment and how it's achieved.